The first style of jig that I want to talk to you guys about is the swim jig. Over the last, I guess you'd say about 2 years, there's been more and more and more online about the swim jig. Now, swimming a jig is nothing new. It's not a new technique. It's been going on for years and years and years, but it's just the last couple years that it's really been catching on. And really, it's only been a few years since a good friend of mine from back east introduced it to me. You know, I'm out here on the West Coast, and swimming a jig was not a big thing out here, but when he conveyed how to do it, really talked to me about what he was doing, why it was working, I latched onto that, started running with it, and sure enough, swimming a jig works across the country. Now, what I've seen online about swimming a jig, some of it is absolutely accurate, some of it not so much, at least from my experience, and that's what TacticalBassin is about. So what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about the swim jig, and there are some different options for swimming the jig. You know, some people will swim like a football head. They'll take a football head and put a curly tail grub on it, like Yamamoto 4-inch double tail, or a Paca chunk, or a rage tail, or something like that, and in crawdad colors, and just swim those along the bottom. But my preference when I go to swim a jig is typically bait fish colors, bluegill colors, bream colors, and that's the way I like to do it. There are basically two styles that I use. One is a more traditional swim jig. I already showed you this head earlier. You know, a nice shad color. This one I believe is called crack, but just an awesome chartreuse white type color, very, very natural. And then a single tail, curly tail grub on the back of that. That's a Yamamoto 5-inch curly tail grub. And you just throw that thing out there and just reel it back. You could shake your rod tip a little bit if you want to get some movement out of it. And it's a great producer. Now this, for me, has never produced big fish. It's just not where my confidence is, and primarily because it's a little tiny package. I mean, you see how small this thing is. It's not a really big bait. So it's awesome at catching numbers when they stop eating the spinnerbait, stop eating the chatterbait, the crankbait. This is something different that will start putting those fish in the boat again, and is awesome in a tournament scenario or a fun fishing scenario. Now, what I do differently, what I don't read about very much online, is this swim jig. Typically, when you hear about swim jigs, people are going to tell you you want to use lightweight, very thin skirts, light wire hooks, light line. It's a finesse technique. Not for me. I love heavy-duty swim jig fishing. This right here, it's the Dirty Jigs No Jack. Now this is actually a grass/flippin' jig, but they come in some colors that you can swim. This one's called Saka Light. It's a crappie color, I guess, but I use it to imitate shad, bait fish. You know, it's just my general bait fish imitator. And then I put a swim bait on the back of it, an actual swim bait. This is a 5-inch RoboWorm Easy Shad, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but here that is again, RoboWorm Easy Shad. You can pick them up just about anywhere, but this is where a lot of that misinformation online is about how to use a heavier duty swim jig. When you see people throwing swim jigs, when you watch videos or you read about it in a magazine, guys are using really finesse stuff, more like this, what I was already talking about, and shaking that rod or whatever they're doing. When you throw this stuff, heavy duty. I'm using a Dobbin 765 flip. That's a 7'6", 5-power flipping stick, 65-pound braid, and then I typically tie on a 20 to 25-pound mono leader. I'm not talking about light equipment at all, but this no jack hook, you cannot bend that thing out. So I put heavy equipment and I just hammer those fish. Now the beauty of this RoboWorm Easy Shad, I'm telling you, this is the key to the whole thing. I've been reading online and people tell you to use 100 different trailers, but I haven't heard anybody talk about using this. This trailer is absolutely incredible. It has amazing vibration, so much so that what it does is overpower the bait. That's the key to this. See, when you're using a swim jig, the purpose of a swim jig is to give you a natural bait fish look. Because a swim bait alone, here's just the bait itself, the Roboworm Easy Shad. If I throw this by itself, I get a general bait fish profile, and the tail's back there doing its thing. It's kicking and vibrating, looks like a fish. And bass absolutely crunch them. Just like that, they eat these things up. But there's something missing. What that is called secondary action. What I mean by that is this is just a plastic bait. The tail will move, but that's all you get. Now a live fish, let's look at a shad. You've got scales shimmering, gills flickering, the body moving, all those things that are natural. The fins are going. That secondary movement is what makes a live fish look different than a bait. That is the power behind a swim jig. Because what I have here is my swim bait. I've got that awesome thumping tail that looks alive. But when it's coming through the water, this skirt is going to puff up and it starts to pulsate and it mimics the fins moving, the gills moving. There's different colors in here that are flashing the light. You've got the look of the scales shimmering. This is what live fish look like in the water. This is all that secondary movement that you just can't do with a swim bait, and you can't get with a spinnerbait or a chatterbait or anything else. You need a combination of the two. Now what's so incredible about the Roboworm Easy Shad, and I've said this in seminars, but I've never taught this stuff online. I, for the longest time, didn't want people to know. This trailer is incredible because it provides so much movement on its own. I already said it overpowers the jig. What I mean by that is the trailer takes over and forces the jig to rock and roll while it's coming through the water. What that means is instead of me having to shake my rod while I'm reeling, now all I do is just reel. I just cast and reel. I mean, it's a true chuck and wind. Throw it out there, reel it back, because that tail is moving so much, the skirt is pulsating just like if I was twitching the rod, but I don't have to do it. I just throw it out, reel it back, and that thing is moving and flowing perfectly on its own. This is something that you need to try. It has made a huge difference in my fishing, and it's just absolutely an amazing, amazing technique. So 5-inch Roboworm Easy Shad. This one is, I don't even know what color this is called. Let's see. It's called Sexy Shad. And then this is the Dirty Jigs No Jack Grass Jig. And I throw it in 1/2 and 3/4 ounce. Those are the only two I'm using. I'm telling you, this is not finesse. Not finesse. I use this in clear water reservoirs. I use it in the Delta, Clear Lake. People I've shared it with around the country do it. It works everywhere, and you don't have to worry about light line and spooking fish because this thing is so natural. The fish aren't worried about the line out in front. They are going to commit to that bait. You need to give this a try.